My brothers and sisters, what is going on? This is Steel Sermon in the house Thursday afternoon with another video. As always, do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram. The link is posted in the box down below. Well, we are about a month or so away from the first spring training game for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And, you guys know how I normally am with the Pirates. I'm usually very gloom and doom with them. I'm very negative towards them, and I got, nothing good to say about them at all. But in this video, I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to try to be a little more positive, and I'm going to be a little more rational when it comes to this team. Because I think a lot of people are being like, well, this guy expects his team to go to the World Series every year. Oh, he expects the Pirates to go to the playoffs every year. I don't expect anything from this team, really. That's my honest thoughts. I really don't expect anything. But seeing the offseason that we've had, it kind of gives me, for the first time in quite some time, I'd probably say in at least 5 or 6 years, they've given me something to draw expectations to. So I'm going to sit down here and talk to you guys about my personal expectations for the Pittsburgh Pirates for 2023. So on paper, you take a look at this team. Like I said, they're not a World Series team in any iota. Not at all. Are they a playoff team? I personally don't think so. But can they be competitive? I think they can be a little more competitive this season, honestly, because they have improved a little bit. Not a whole lot, but they have improved a little bit. And, you take a look back at last year as a whole. 2022 was a terrible year for the Pirates. You had the dumpster fire known as Yoshi Tsutsugo there. Josh Van Meter were still in the lineup. I don't know why Derek Shelton thought in his right mind that those two players were any sort of major league talent and long-term, solutions for this team. But at least the Pirates did the right thing in the end. They're no longer on the team anymore. We were losing players as far as the bullpen and the rotation goes as well. But then we brought up some prospects last year as well. Jack Suwinski and O'Neal Cruz and Bly Madris are the headliners for that. Cal Mitchell, I think, got some playing time last year as well, too. So we were calling up some prospects last year. They made some progress. They put their names on the map a little bit. They made a name for themselves. Little sprinkles of positivity in a terrible season for the Pirates in which we lost 100 games once again. Derek Shelton, by the way, as I keep mentioning, first Pirates manager in the history of this franchise to lose 100 games in back-to-back seasons. So, that should warrant a firing. In my opinion, that should warrant a firing. And I just don't see why he should be manager of this team in 2023. Shouldn't that be like the final straw? Because Shelton, again, last year, it all goes back to how he is as a manager. Constantly mismanaged the bullpen, constantly fumbled up the lineups, constantly did not put players in positions to be successful, constantly did not make good lineups. Now, whether it's fair or not to put all that on Derek Shelton or the lack of talent that he had, the fact of the matter is, it's a big part on Derek Shelton for why this team continues to take so many L's every single season. So I feel like 2023 is going to be the season where we truly see how much of a manager that Derek Shelton is. But again, if you ask me personally, I want this guy gone. This guy cannot be the manager of the team. And the unfortunate reality is that he's going to stay with us because there really isn't a viable candidate to replace him, and no other MLB team in their right mind would give him a job at this point. But that's all we can say. However, you take a look at what the front office and what Ben Cherington's done this offseason with the Pirates. They've done something that the Pirates have not done, quite frankly, since Neil Huntington was here. We spent money. It wasn't a crazy amount like the Dodgers and Yankees and Red Sox do on a consistent basis every year, but we did something with it. We brought in some placeholders. We brought in some veteran pieces that could potentially serve as leadership roles and role models for this team because, like I said a couple weeks ago in a video I made about the Pirates, I kept asking these guys last year, do you see anyone on this lineup that's a leader, that can guide these young players, and that can guide anyone to being as successful as they can possibly be? And I kept saying, no. However, you bring in Carlos Santana. Guy's been in the league for over a decade now. Came off a stint with the Seattle Mariners. He's a longtime Cleveland Indian. We bring him in. Choi, we called him up. He's going to probably have some playing time. Austin Hedges, another veteran. Good defensive catcher. You bring him up. He doesn't have a good bat, but you bring him up because of his defensive ability. Rich Hill, the guy's 1,000,000 years old. He's going to be in the rotation. Vince Velasquez, maybe not so much hype with him, but at least it's a veteran move right there. And then, of course, the big one, Andrew McCutchen, we got 2 weeks ago back from the Milwaukee Brewers. These are veteran moves, and these are veteran players that have seen a substantial to a lot of time in the MLB to where they can potentially be role models to these young players. Because you take a look at, in my opinion, what this roster is going to be like for the Pirates for 2023. I think this should be the everyday lineup here. Austin Hedges is probably going to be the catcher this year. Again, doesn't have a good bat, but he's a real good defensive catcher. I think that's the reason why we brought him up, so that way he can help complement and give us a little preview of what guys like Endy Rodriguez and Henry Davis are going to eventually become behind the plate for us. As far as Carlos Santana and Choi, they're probably going to platoon time at first base. I just think it's, pick whoever you think is more defensive capable between those two, but I think those two are going to share a lot of time at first base this year. Rodolfo Castro, that guy's going to spend a lot of time at second base. I expect him to be the second base guy, and even if he is not the guy moving forward at second base, we still got a guy like Nick Gonzalez down in the farm who will hopefully, fingers crossed, be called up sometime this year. We got Key Brian Hayes at third base. Probably the best defensive third baseman, the best defensive infielder in the entire game. He's been getting that. He should have won a Gold Glove last year. The guy saves a lot of runs. He is a little injury prone, but guess what? When he's healthy, he's as good as any other player in the league. The guy has a great glove. The guy's a phenomenal fielder. He's got a lot of athletic ability. This guy's a phenomenal defensive player at third base, and this is a guy who I think is worthy of the extension that he received before the beginning of last season. Then we got, of course, the big guy, O'Neal Cruz at second base. Sky's the limit for him. He saw a decent amount of time in the big leagues last year. People are criticizing him because he keeps striking out and because of his batting average and because he keeps chasing the off-speed pitches. You got to remember, last year was his rookie season. This is going to be his first full season in the league. The guy's only going to get better. I think he's going to be 23 this year, if I'm not mistaken. 23, 24, somewhere. He's in his early 20s. That's the point. He's a young guy. He just finished his rookie season. This is going to be his first full season in the league. Once he gets more experience, once he gets a new hitting coach, and once he gets a new manager, hopefully, then he will be a better player. But until now, just expect the growing pains with him. He's going to be okay. O'Neal Cruz has a ton of talent to offer to the leagues. Think of O'Neal Cruz like this. Would he be getting as much hype as he did last year if he was no good? He's a great player, and he's going to get better. So lay off the criticism with him. Outfield, I think, is going to look like this. You got Jack Sawinski in left field. Again, he sparked some headlines last year with the Bucks. He has a little bit of pop in the bat, and he's a pretty good fielder as well. And obviously, the outfield in general, that's some patch-up work that the Pirates need to address as well, which is where I think it's beneficial to have a guy like Henry Davis, with the fielding ability that he has, which is why if Endy Rodriguez spends more time behind home plate, you put a guy like Henry Davis in the outfield. But for right now, I expect Jack Suwinski to be in left field. Brian Reynolds is still here. The saga with him continues. Is he going to be a Pirate in 2023? I anticipate him to be in the black and yellow in 2023, but again, only time will tell. I expect him to play center field. And then, of course, we bring Andrew McCutchen back. I think he's going to be in right field this season. So overall, that's your lineup right there for the Pirates. I mean, it looks improved. It looks a million times better than it did last season, but still, I mean, you look at this team, it's a mix of veteran players with some young guys thrown in the mix, and you think to yourself, that maybe this team can be not even a lot better, just a little bit better this year. Which brings me to the pitching. Now, the pitching still needs a lot of work. The pitching is by far the weakest point of this team, aside from Derek Shelton, obviously. But you get a guy like Roansy Contreras. He's been improving. He really had he had some headlines last year. I expect him to be the unofficial ace of this team, if you will. Even though I don't like Rich Hill, he is reliable. He is a veteran at the end of the day. It's not like he's going to be here for the next 10 years or something, but Rich Hill is going to be in the rotation. JT Brubaker is back. The guy's had some pretty tough years with us, but, again, I think that he just needs to either get a new pitching coach or just get a new manager altogether. Like, you see how a lot of these problems revolve around Derek Shelton. I think he's the reason why that this team is just not being competitive, because Derek Shelton just doesn't know how to make it competitive. You get not Luis Castillo. You get Luis Ortiz. You get Luis Ortiz. That's a question mark for him. Is he going to be a bullpen guy, or is he going to be in the rotation? I still don't like the guy, Mitch Keller, but he had, quote-unquote, his best season of his young career so far last year, so maybe he can take that next step forward this year into being a top 2 guy for us in the rotation. Then you take a look at guys like Castillo, Burrows, Priester, and Oviedo. Are they going to get called up from the farm this year? Because it looks like that with how last year we called up the prospects, like I said earlier, you call up some of your pitching prospects now, help out the back end of the bullpen, help out the rotation even, and maybe this pitching can be somewhat more tolerable and somewhat more reliable for this year, So those are all big question marks right there as far as the Pirates go, because like I said, you got a mix of veterans and youngins on the team, and it again revolves around the question of which prospects are going to be called up for 2023. Because like I said, the roster this year, I feel like if a lot of these players on the team play up to their standard, it brings along a line of consistency and development as well, and confidence boosters here and there. You take like guys like Rodolfo Castro. If he doesn't prove that he's the second baseman of the future, we can call up Nick Gonzalez. If O'Neal Cruz continues to struggle, we can fall back on the thing that he's a young guy and that we just have a really bad manager who's telling him to lay off fastballs and to chase off-speed pitches. You look at a guy like Jack Suwinski. Maybe left field is not his natural position. Maybe we bring him back in right field like we did last year. I don't know. But you see what I mean with that? Can they play up to their standard, and can they play up to their narrative? Because that's going to develop a lot of consistency. So, in short, with all that being said about the Pirates, how many wins do I expect this team to have? Because during this rebuild so far, if you want to count 2020, okay, I personally don't because it was only 60 games. I hardly even count it, but 19 wins in 2020, 61 wins 2021, 62 last year. Okay? Is it more realistic for the Pirates to have a third straight 100-loss season? Or is it realistic for them to be a wild card team in this incredibly stacked National League? Sure, you got your powerhouses in the National League like the Dodgers, the Mets, the Braves. The Phillies were a great surprise team last year. St. Louis is always a thorn in our side. But then you take a look at teams like San Diego. You take a look at teams like San Francisco. You take a look at teams like Milwaukee. The Cubs are starting to build up a foundation here. Is it possible this team lose? Which is more possible for this team to lose 100 games again or to be a wild card? To me, that answer is neither. But I don't expect them to lose 100 games again. I'll put it to you like this. I don't expect this team to lose 100 games more than I expect them to be a wild card. I'll put it to you like that. Okay? But realistically, my answer is neither for any of those. This is the furthest thing from a World Series team. This is probably not a playoff team this year. When late August, September rolls around, you're probably not going to see the Pirates in the playoff picture. It's just not going to happen. But competitiveness and improvement are expectations of mine, considering what we've done in the offseason and considering what the farm system is looking like for us. And should we continue to not bury these prospects like we're famous for doing, this team can be competitive. Because there are a lot of replaceable guys on this team. Okay? I'm not a Carlos Santana guy. I'm not an Austin Hedges guy. I'm not, completely in love with Andrew McCutchen coming back. But I also know that they're replaceable and that they are not the long-term solutions for us, and they're probably not going to be here by the end of 2023. That's my main point. I think for the Pirates, in order for them to have to consider it even the smallest percent of a successful season this year, they have to avoid 90 losses. Forget about avoiding 100 losses. I'm saying avoid 90 losses. I'll consider it a major improvement for the Pirates. That has to be a W for them. Because that would imply, hey, we can hang in there with some of these good teams. We can hang in there with, the cream of the crop in the National League. I mean, we took 5 out of 6 against LA last year, did we not? We need to be able to do that. And in the process, beat some teams that you expect to beat. The Reds are a team that we should beat. Colorado's probably a team that we should beat. Arizona's a team that we should beat. Washington's a team that we should beat. We play all 30 teams this year, just so you know. Detroit's a team that we should be able to beat. Oakland's a team that we should be able to beat. Maybe even Texas is a team that we should be able to beat. If you can beat those teams that you're able to beat on your schedule and just hang in there with teams like the Dodgers, the Astros, the Braves, the Mets, the Yankees, Cleveland, the White Sox when they're healthy, who are our home opener, by the way, the Chicago White Sox. If you can just hang in there with those teams, not necessarily beat them, but hang in there with them and then build off of that, that is establishing an expectation. And that is a confidence shot for the rebuild to get done quicker. How many wins do I expect the Pirates to have this year? I think a safe bet is somewhere between 67 to 72 wins. That's my realistic expectation. I don't expect them to lose 100 games again. I don't expect them to make the wild card. But I do expect them to show improvement with these offseason moves that we made. Like I said, 67 to 72 wins. That's a fair prediction and a fair reality setter for this team right here. So, in conclusion, those are my expectations for the Pirates. I hope to see improvement and not just have a spark here and there where they're competitive one week and then they just look like the early 2010s and late 2019 all over again like they did last year. Those are my expectations. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. This is Steel Sermon. Checking on out for the night. May God be with you all.